Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm really pleased to welcome Coral Marsila. She is an engineer from Brazil. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Well, no, it's great to have you. And I have to say, this is the first time that I have ever had the pleasure of interviewing a female engineer. So let's get right to it. Tell me where you're from and how you got into yachting.
Well, I'm from Brazil. That's what I grew up. I always grew up by the water, the beach, and surfing and everything. It was lovely. And I joined the Navy when I graduated high school. So I was in the Brazilian Navy for 3 years. And that's how I got my certification to become a merchant Navy engineer. And I worked in Brazil for a year and a half with the smaller boats supplying oil rigs, because that's quite big in Brazil. And then I decided to try something a little different. I've heard here and there about the yacht industry, but at that time, I had no idea what it entails or what I needed to do to go through it. So I started applying for through agencies and applying for jobs and all that. And one day I decided to visit an agency in person. That would have been Thursday. They put me through a job. I got an interview on the Friday, and on the Monday, I was joining my first yacht. It was
Wow.
very quick, very quick.
How many other female engineers have you come across in your time?
In yachting, I've never crossed any female engineer. Back at home, it is a lot more normal because the oil industry is so huge. So we do have a big demand for engineers in general. So there is a bigger interest in that. But yachting, I still haven't met any.
Wow. So for you, what was the draw to become an engineer in Brazil? What was the draw there?
Well, I've always liked helping my dad fix things and build things, and he always inventing little things, and he always wanted to have a son, and he had two daughters. So I joke with him that I'm the son he never had.
Nice. And when you got into yachting, why would you choose yachting over any other form of marine or being an engineer on land? What was it about yachting that really drew you?
Right. Well, I absolutely love traveling. I love meeting new people and learning new cultures. It's such a huge world that we have very little knowledge of. And that was the biggest draw for me. I've always loved engineering, but yachting allows you to meet people from literally all over the world and visit all over the world. So that was huge for me.
And for you, what would you say was the has been the biggest influence with yachting and for you to carry on in your career? What is the thing that excites you the most?
Well, I do I do see myself trying to reach the top as an engineer to go for a chief engineer. And I think that can be quite inspiring for other women to see a female engineer growing in such a prestige industry. Yachting is not just it's a bit different when you work in the oil industry. It's a bit gritty. It doesn't have the wow factor of working in the yacht and being a chief engineer in a huge 100-meter plus boat. I think that would be the biggest accomplishment.
Is there any tips or tricks that you would say to anybody that is not only looking to getting into yachting or perhaps that is looking to take the route that you've taken into engineering? Is there any tips or tricks that you can give to those that are looking at it?
Well, I would definitely, especially for female engineers, I would suggest to start on a bigger boat. It's very interesting because we have such a big engineering team where you can feed from the motorman, the electrician, the AVIT, and you can learn all these different skills that you probably wouldn't as much on a smaller boat. Besides, on a bigger boat, would be a lot easier to get a dog because of male only due to cabin arrangements. So on bigger boats, you'd have your own cabin, which then it would be easier for someone to hire you as a female engineer. I would suggest though to do keep an open mind. some people might not be used at all to have female engineers, and they might have the vision where the female is this the fragile sex, which is not the case at all. We can do the exact same job as they do, sometimes even better. But yeah, absolutely. I would definitely suggest someone to try yachting. It's quite fulfilling, and it would expose you to different experiences that you probably wouldn't be able to in any other industry.
Well, Coral, I do thank you for your time. And you know what? I would encourage, if there is any other female engineers out there, please do get in touch, because as I said, this is my first interview with a female engineer, and you have never met another one in the yachting industry. So it'd be great to sort of connect you.
Absolutely. It would be lovely to have someone in the same department to just have a chat and change experiences. And yeah, it would be really, really nice.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who's on the same sort of wavelength at times, I can imagine.
Yes, that they understand what you're going through, and they understand how demanding the job can be. You know, I mean, you will always be able to talk within different departments, but when it's another engineer, they can actually understand what you're going through. So yeah, that would be great.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to make sure to provide your LinkedIn information underneath this interview when it airs, just to make sure that those that are interested in chatting with you and those that are interested in getting a little bit of information on how to get into a career such as yours, they can reach out to you as well.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Coral. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Once again, you've been watching another edition of the PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm really pleased to welcome purser Samantha Morris. She is somewhere in the world on a super yacht doing her job at the moment. So thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Ria, for taking the time to interview me today.
Yes, of course. Well, tell me about you. What got you into yachting in the first place? What was the attraction?
So previous to yachting, I was 5 years on the cruise ships as a finance manager. And several times we would dock in the Caribbean, and alongside us would be a yacht. And I said to my dad, when I don't want to work on the cruise ships anymore, I want to work on one of those. So I started to apply to get into the yachting industry.
And tell me, what is the difference between working on a cruise ship and working in a yacht?
When I was on the cruise ship, I had longer contracts on board. I was doing finance manager role, so dealing solely with all the finances on board, the guest accounting, the crew accounting, and the payroll. The purser job on board is like 4 jobs from the cruise ship combined. So like your HR manager, the crew manager, finance manager, and administration manager. So this is all rolled into one for the purser role.
Do you find financially that working in yachting is a step up from cruise ships?
It's a trick question. Financially, if you're talking about the salaries, obviously the salaries are more generous and in the yachting side of the industry. So yes, yeah, is the answer.
And labor-wise, did you find that when you were working on cruise ships, it was a lot more work, or is the work about equal?
It depends on your position. I would say that for my position, I had less work on the cruise ships, but longer contracts and less pay. So, but then if you were a chef or maybe a medical profession, you were more busy on the cruise ship than you are on the yacht. So it totally depends on which position you have on board.
And the time, I mean, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about the time when you're working, you know, when you go out on charter, for example. Do you find that you spend a lot more hours working in the yachting industry than you do on a cruise ship? For
me personally, yes. Yeah. And especially now, obviously, during the COVID, and for everybody, the situation is the same, that we obviously have got a lot more restrictions. To be able to, main part of the purser job is to get the crew on and off the boat, and this is a lot more difficult, as you and Lee both know. So yeah, I work more hours on a cruise ship for my personal job than I did when I was on the yachting than I was when I was on the cruise ship. Sorry about that.
No worries. Well, yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, now just arranging travel for your crew must be it's almost a full-time job, just the travel alone, because you're arranging, every aspect of it. Now you're throwing in PCR tests. It's not just a matter of, getting your crew to the airport to point A to point B. It is now, I mean, it's a whole logistical nightmare unto its own, let alone sort of arranging crew when you get into port. For you, what is the most rewarding part of working in yachting?
People that you meet, the relationships that you build. A vessel can be any vessel. It can be a cruise ship, it can be a yacht, it can be a cargo ship, but the crew on board is what makes makes my job anyway. The people that I meet, the port agents, the management company, everyone that you come into contact with, you're building relationships constantly. It's the people, like I said, the people for me is what makes the job.
And let me ask you before I let you go, because I know you are in a very demanding position and still on shift, just a little break. I wanted to ask you if somebody wanted to achieve the purser role on board, such as you, and you don't work on little yachts, you work on some pretty nice super yachts, and you have done in the past. What would you suggest? What would your suggestions be to those that want to do what you're doing?
Firstly, is to never give up on your dreams. Like, coming into yachting, it's sometimes it's not an easy route. Like, you may get a lot of no's before you get a yes. So to never give up, and also try to do the research first. Like you need to make sure you've got the right, like STCW qualifications, your medical first. These as a first start off before you would obviously even get looked at in yachting. Check your CV, make sure your CV is correctly. And recently they just made the purser course. They gave the purser COC accredited. So this, for me, I did the purser course, getting into from cruise ships to yachting. It's not always required, but they're seeing it more and more now. They're asking for it on the positions. So, yeah. And anyone also, they can reach out and ask me any questions if they like.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll make sure to get your email address. And you know what? I mean, I would suggest one of the things that I hear most often when I do these cruise spotlights is people always say, get yourself a mentor. Reach out and ask those questions. Never be afraid to ask the question. So the fact that, and all of the people that I talk to actually always say, please, we're here to talk to anybody that wants to talk or ask questions.
No question is a stupid question.
That's amazing. Well, Samantha, I thank you ever so much for your time, and I'm going to let you get back to your busy day.
Thank you very much. I'm surprised the phone's not rang.
Well, we've been trying to keep it short for that specific reason. Once again, I have to say thank you very, very much to purser Samantha Morris. She is on a beautiful super yacht somewhere on the planet doing the purser job. So we really do appreciate the fact that she took the time out to talk to us today. You've been watching another edition of the PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.